Please welcome Clara, Lourdessa, Oryza, and Emmanuella.
To start off, I want to tell a story about tugas akhir. This is exactly how me and my friends would react when one of us starts talking about TEA. Then, followed by composed and serious expressions, saying, "Berprogres terus kok," or, "Iya, gue tinggal ngerjain ini, terus kelar deh bab 3. When in reality, probably the night before, I sobbed hysterically to my boyfriend while ranting about not being able to finish it on time. The reason why I wanted to share this story with all of you is because it was my moment of peak overthinking. It started with the tiniest objective fact in my head. I felt like I didn't start working on TEA as early as the others based on their Instagram stories showing progress. Not long after, questions started popping up. What if I can't finish it on time? What if I can't even find a suitable topic? What if none of the lecturers want to take on this topic? What if the methodology of the topic I've chosen is not even acceptable in the first place? What if my style lecturer actually knows that this topic is rejected or is no longer acceptable, but decides not to tell me? What if, even after being accepted and validated by my lecturer, I will get a lecturer who doesn't like this topic as an examiner, chooses to fail me, make me graduate late, and disappoint my own parents? What if? It's an never-ending suffocation by what ifs. To find out more about how this is affecting me, I use an energyometer to compare the amount of energy exerted while dealing with this. All it took is a snap of a finger for something to happen as a stimulus. So, the energy I needed was this much. Meanwhile, when the what-ifs start creeping in because of the reality and what happened, I imagined the possibilities, the many possibilities, as if they were reality. The results? My body is often beaten up, exhausted from the tremendous energy exerted. For example, crying myself to sleep, putting myself down for deciding the wrong thing, blaming myself for not doing this, and many more. To gain more perspective, I asked mine and TEDxITS followers on what things make them overthink the most. And here are some of their answers. They answered that they overthink about the future and achieving our goals. I myself have experienced them firsthand. When faced with these thoughts, I was haunted with questions like, what if I am not going to be accepted because of what I said? After not passing one application, what if other people think less of me? After seeing someone else get into a program that I did not apply for, what if he or she can easily get a job or gain more network because of that program? Then those questions became my reality. Even before any announcement of selection, I cried out of fear, not being accepted, of being seen as less worthy, and beat myself up because of the mistakes that I thought I did. From those phenomena, you can probably already map out the constant state that I am in, especially when faced with uncertainty and struggles in the major happenings of my life. Hence, a CEO of Overthinking, if you can read it. And this year's TEDxITS sub-theme of tomorrow is quite interesting. It brings up the topic of befriending the trauma, letting go and embracing the past, which, let's be honest, is easier said than done. And for overthinkers like myself, and maybe some of you here, we never let go. Overthinking is the inability to embrace the past, which causes obsession over the outcome in the future. Ideally, a normal person would go from point 1, that is what happened in the past, straight to point 2, the reality. When having to wait to reach point 2, a normal person would exactly do that. Wait. And when already reaching point 2, the normal person would take note of it, evaluate it, and spend no more energy on it. Instead, in my case, when I overthink, I go from point 1, not straight to point 2, but to 1.1.1, 1.2 until 1.1.4. And then I make up an entirely different scenario of 1.2.1 until 1.2.3, and so on before finally reaching point 2. To give you an example, let me try to relate with most of the first and second years here. And I remember the time I was joining recruitments left and right. Try to imagine. Point 1 is me throughout the recruitment process, reached the final interview session, and is waiting for the result. And point 2 is the announcement results, which probably comes out a week later. Instead of patiently waiting, my mind started to wander and started asking, what if the interviewer didn't like how I answered? What if I wasn't friendly enough? And then continuously beating myself up for the 1,000 mistakes that I think I did. It was all in my head. And the hardest thing about this is, I perceive every scenario as a possibility and experience it as potential reality. Why? Because in an overthinker's mind, everything is possible, even the slightest chances. Recognizing this, I wanted to identify the trend of what kind of scenarios are made every time I overthink. Every time I deep dive and I just started thinking a lot of thoughts. To do that, I did a little journaling and took note of the 10 recent overthinking moments in my life. Starting from the heavy relationship worries, paranoid about having a rat in my room, until panicking about speaking at a freaking TEDx talk, I overthink every single bit. And trust me, you don't really want to read all those 10 stuff. While jotting these down and recalling the thought process, I had a moment of epiphany. I realized that the overthinking either goes one way or another, positive or negative turn, as a defense mechanism depending on what I need. And it turns out that the positive type is coming up with scenarios to make me feel better over what I did and what happened in the past. Meanwhile, the negative type is coming up with negatives to lower my expectations instead and to decrease risk of heartbreak if it does come true. When I think the reality will have a negative result, I tend to think positive, maybe something good will happen. And when I think the reality will have a positive result, I tend to overthink negatively, lowering my chance of heartbreak. For example, I did really bad at this one interview, and I knew this. My performance was just not it. But since I so desperately wanted to get this thing I am applying for, my mind decided to implement the art of manifestation and overthink positively. I kept on saying to myself, even though you answered terribly, you truly showed your friendly personality, and at the end of the day, they could accept you solely for that. I really wanted to believe in that, and I wanted that to happen. I really did. But it turns out that the reality is always the opposite of my overthinking, and is accurate to what I first thought the reality would be. I figured the reason why this happens is because I am afraid of reality. I am never satisfied to stop at just one conclusion, always coming up with many others. Overthinking turns out to be unnecessary. I could have just crossed it out and settled with the hard truth or the initial confidence I had in the beginning, with no need to make circumstances and myself feel better or worse. Remembering what Shakespeare said, there is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. So, let's dive deeper into this phenomenon. What actually goes on inside the brain of an overthinker? If any of you have watched Tim Urban's legendary TED Talk on procrastinators, you would know that a scan of a procrastinator's brain looked like this. What's highlighted here is the instant gratification monkey, whose role prioritizes short-term satisfaction, such as leisure time, watch a marathon of Korean dramas, over doing the actual work, which results in procrastination. So then I asked myself, what about an overthinker? I was really curious about it and asked my daughter for a brain scan showing overthinking symptoms. And the results revealed a significant difference to that of procrastinators, where instead of a gratification monkey, there seems to be a bull. And although I can't illustrate as good as Tim Urban, you can see a bull that is aggressive once fixated with the color of red and is in a constant state of distress. In my brain, the color of red represents the past, and the aggressiveness causes a spiral of thoughts. When the rational decision maker chooses to steer the wheel on the simple path of accepting the past and moving on, saying, what happened has indeed happened. Let's focus on the next thing. The bull will instead steer the wheel and dash throughout the path full of turns, predicting scenarios and outcomes as if they were really the answer, sassily saying, this could happen, that will lead to this, which will result in that, hence causing that. It was quite annoying. And clearly, obviously, I needed to stop this bull. Watching it go wild, this bull as the cause of overthinking, I realized how much of a narcissist it really is. Once the bull sees red, it becomes possessed, moving out of control. Just like my overthinking self, when faced with the aftermath of a happening in the past, I get so full of myself, drowned in my own spiraling thoughts. Overthinkers tend to be too immersed in their own thoughts that revolve around themselves. Not to mention, these thoughts are usually plot twists, life-changing conflict, and talk-of-the-town material that only happens to main characters in a movie. When in actuality, not everything is about us. People and the world won't give us much spotlight. We tend to overestimate our actions and what happened to us, as discussed by Berkeley Scientific Journal, on a concept of spotlight effect. But trust me, people are too busy about thinking about themselves too, rather than of us. Then, how do we cope with it? Some of you guys shared your thoughts and said some stuff. Some of you guys said, hanging around with friends and asking my mentors and go mountain climbing and many more. In terms of my way, I believe that the answer to a narcissistic problem is a narcissistic solution. How? I choose to give the raging bull a blindfold. A blindfold that I like to call the bull shield. Yes, the bull shield. This bull shield will block its visual ability, not let it see the red, basically calm it down. In reality, this comes in the form of a pair of hands covering my eyes. A narcissistic solution translates to inevitably needing external force, and that's completely logical. Hence, this comes in the form of external validation. In theory, this is what you call the Pygmalion effect, how others' belief and expectations can shape our reality by self-perception. There are many journals and research on this, studying how other people's beliefs dictate one's performance. So, if we go back to my initial story on Tugas Akhir, I personally experienced this solution. I reached out to some people around me, my best friends, my parents, and my boyfriend. My parents asked me, "Are you sure you can graduate on time?" It was just a question, one little harmless question. But this little question of doubt was amplified into something worse by my mind. I was extremely hurt and became demotivated, despite knowing that the reason that they asked that was because they do not know the day-to-day progress. Meanwhile, on the other hand, my best friends and my boyfriend, who are always with me and knows the effort and determination, without a doubt knew that I would make it. Their belief in me became the pair of hands bull shielding me. When the bull starts raging and my thoughts spiral out of control, I went to the person who knows me best, who knows the struggles I've overcome, the achievements I've successfully chased for, then finally had the courage to ask them about my self-doubts. But remember, the external validation I got was not all rainbows and flowers. And that's normal, because that's just life. The fact that my parents doubted me, it really destroyed me. I was constantly haunted by those words and perceived failure as my reality, because there's nothing I want more than to make them proud. As a result, I was very unproductive, where instead of focusing on doing my taya, I was distracted and lifeless, feeling like the biggest disappointment. But then, when my best friends and my boyfriend came into the equation, their positive beliefs overpowered the negative ones, neutralized my thoughts, and made me believe in myself again, which resulted in me being more productive. Because if they can trust and believe in me, why can't I? Though sometimes, at the very worst time, I don't have anyone but myself. And at those moments, I thought, maybe that right person to believe in me is actually just myself. Those hands that are covering your eyes can be someone else's or your own. Those words you believe in can even come from yourself through the sayings of comfort in your notebook. Whichever way you do it, both are equally courageous and are something to be proud of. Now, I'm ready to officially let go of the title as CEO of Overthinking. So I am giving away this cap to one of you guys here who still struggle with overthinking and letting it bring you down. You can wear this cap proudly, display it in your bedroom, or just let it be a reminder that you can own your overthinking and fight against it. This is me telling my version of the story and passing it on so you can tell your version of the story someday. So, can I see the hands of all the overthinkers in here? Okay, I see some. I'm throwing it on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Oh, and one last note. For those of you who are around these overthinkers who raised their hands, there was quite a lot. May that be your friend, your lover, your family, your taya partner. Please recognize the bull inside their heads and be the blindfold it needs. Thank you.